The year is 1964. JFK has been shot and killed in Dallas. Nelson Mandela is sentenced to life imprisonment. America marches to war in Vietnam. It's a time of contradictions. In Australia, Robert Menzies may be Prime Minister, but the Beatles are king. One Sydney suburb becomes a mecca for disaffected youth, the home of the red light district, illegal gambling and drug culture, King's Cross. When Ted Noffs, a Methodist minister, first comes to King's Cross, he brings with him new ideas and a way of thinking about humanity that challenges religious convention.
When I went into Woolloomooloo, nobody could tell me anything about young people. You know, I was an expert on youth. I'd started all of these programs that the church considered to be radical. But when I went into that first pad, I discovered that I knew absolutely nothing and that I had to begin all over again.
He takes over a pair of unassuming apartment blocks in a quiet street, and within the space of a few years, turns them into an assortment of venues, a coffee shop, an auditorium, counselling rooms, a crisis centre, and a place of worship. Ted calls it the Wayside Chapel.
It started out in Ted's day. It was a very bohemian kind of place. It was the fashionable place to get married. And artists and poets and so on used to hang out here.
Yeah, well, I sort of go up the chapel because, well, there's nowhere else to go, you know, and it doesn't cost you anything, and you sort of meet people there that sort of accept everyone for what they are. And
the chapel quickly becomes known as a place for open discussion and debate. Everyone is welcome. Poets, hippies, bikies, lawyers, even the odd Prime Minister.
Then, around about the time of the Vietnam War, where the drug culture took over, both Wayside and King's Cross became a fairly seedy sort of place. And, you know, life became a lot harder.
I'm a 42-year-old broken mother sitting alone, helpless, waiting for my son to destroy himself with drugs. In his bedroom sits the most beautiful 21st birthday cake that will never be cut. The nuclear war may or may not happen. The drug war is already happening. There are so many parents like me who suffer in silence. I don't know who to turn to.
There is someone to talk to 24 hours a day. The Wayside Crisis Centre.
The Wayside is also a place for celebration.
A Christmas street party was what they planned at the Wayside Chapel in King's Cross, and despite the weather, a street party is what they had.
Vows, wedding rings and a kiss in the best Western traditions.
Ted also conducts over 9,000 naming ceremonies for children, a practice which puts him at odds with some church officials and earns him the allegation of heresy. The strain from Ted's ever-increasing workload and the pressure from church authorities starts to show. He becomes ill and loses weight. And in 1987, at the age of 68, Ted Noffs suffers a massive stroke. He's unable to return to work. The leadership of the Wayside passes to one of the co-founders of the chapel, Reverend Ray Richmond. Ray continues in a manner no less controversial.
Welfare agencies say funds would be better spent on drug rehabilitation than trying to guard Australia's massive coastline from smugglers.
And we're throwing a huge amount of money at that particular part of the drug problem, and it's not working. Our coastline leaks like a sieve.
He establishes a safe injecting room known as the Tolerance Room, an act of civil disobedience, which nevertheless results in a change to state legislation and the first medically supervised injecting centre.
Now the churches have decided to act, flouting the law to provide safe injecting rooms where addicts can shoot up.
At Wayside we got sick of picking up bodies. You know, this little lane behind us was called Hope Lane, probably the saddest name for a lane in the world because it's where hope died. And there are a lot of people who were losing their life simply because they didn't get help, you know. So I admire the pastor before me who took that stand, and we are totally supportive of the injecting centre.
Ray also oversees the launch of the Hands-On Health Clinic, the Bathhouse and Youth Space, a program that focuses on young people most at risk. However, the costs of running Wayside's programs start to spiral out of control. Funds are in short supply and building maintenance suffers.
For 45 years it's been helping people who fall by the wayside, but now it's the chapel itself that needs help. The buildings are crumbling and there's not enough money for renovations. It's become so bad the centre may have no choice but to close.
$8 million is needed to completely redevelop the existing buildings. More than a few say it's impossible to raise such a large amount. The future of the Wayside hangs in the balance.
We had reserves of 0. In fact, had the sewerage system failed, you know, what would we have done? I don't know. We might have been able to borrow money to get out of a spot like that. But there is no doubt that our continuity was seriously under discussion.
The Save the Wayside campaign begins, led by new pastor and CEO, Graham Long.
When I arrived, you could smell the carpet on the ground floor from the footpath. And you looked at the buildings and the buildings more or less said, nobody cares.
With the generous support of federal and state governments, individuals and the business community, Wayside achieves its fundraising target. Work commences in June 2010.
I wouldn't wish a building program onto my worst enemy, but I shouldn't whinge because we've had a dream run. You know, we've just had the best people in the world jump on with us, and we've got through this exercise with a minimum loss of skin, and we more or less finished this thing on budget. And you know, having started with no money, we finished this thing debt-free. So, you know, that says something pretty amazing.
The result is testimony to the generosity of those who believe, not in any specific creed or religion, but rather a belief in the power of the unconditional love and support that Wayside has been giving to the people of King's Cross since 1964.
There are no agencies much that use the word love, and there are none that use the word hate, I promise you. But they're the right words. They're the right words for us. And if you work here for a little while, it is not long and you'll see somebody aged 10 years in 6 months, literally. People punish themselves, and self-hate is the right word. That's what it is. And we try to be the place where love and hate intersect.
I'm a human being, and no one in the world is a stranger to me.